Okay, so we are around midway through the US session on Tuesday, the 29th of October. Pretty thankless price action in the main US indices. We're very, very range bound, which is perhaps not a surprise given the earnings reports we've got this week and the economic schedule mixed with non-farm payrolls on Friday and then the US elections next week. Meanwhile, we are in the thick of earnings season with a lot of the major stocks reporting this week. And the two big names that I want to look at that are reporting after the bell tonight are AMD and Google or Alphabet. So I'm going to start with AMD. That's one of the larger cap stocks in the semiconductor sector. So it's part of SMH in that sense. It's also part of XLK. So starting as usual with the relative rotation, and what I'm doing is to start with is taking the core ETF, so that's the 11 core sector ETFs, you can see them listed there, and doing them relative to the SPY main index itself. Now you can see XLK is down here and it's shaded yellow. That's in the weakening sector therefore. So here is XLK. You can see the tail. It's had a brief period in the leading sector and it's now coming out. More than that, it's heading slightly down and across towards the lagging sector. So you notice that the Nasdaq has been weaker, for instance, than the S&P 500 in recent weeks. That's reflective, therefore XLK is a major component of the Nasdaq. So that's the first area of concern. Now, if I then take the XLK itself here and compare it to, ironically, you select XLK again, and therefore it will identify each of the main stocks. Now I've told it just to stick to the top 10 on a daily basis so that we can see relative to the others in its group, where's AMD? And AMD is all the way over here. So within a sector that is weakening and heading towards lagging, AMD has been weakening even within that and is now in the lagging sector. About the only thing positive that we can say about it on a relative rotation basis is that it is now starting to move up towards improving. So a little bit of signs of encouragement there potentially for tonight's earnings report. But generally speaking, on a relative basis, AMD is weak compared to on a daily basis, and it's over the last, I've told it to look back around 2 weeks. So if we then take this out and look at the weekly chart of AMD, I'm just going to scrunch this in so you can see the price action. And we had this kind of carry on here into the 2015 low, at which point this thing took off, broke out, and was looking very much like we were forming a large 5-wave impulse structure. So that's the lowest low, and therefore we would need to see 5 waves at primary degree. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 for the wave 1 with an ABC back, then another wave 1 up with a pullback, 5 in there, up to a 123.6 fib extension, which is exactly what you would want to see textbook wise for a wave 3 of 3. We got a deeper 4, but it held a 764 bottom up fib. It did not interfere with the 4 of 1 lesser degree. Then we broke out and made a new high. And if this was going to continue to subdivide, then you would expect to see a 2, 3, 4, 5, albeit that's an ABC structure. So therefore the 5th wave of 3 can only be an ending diagonal, but it would have a target of at least 356 and possibly 496. However, there are some concerns here in that the cycles are starting to turn. So if I look at the composite cycle here, it's expecting further downside right throughout next year. And that is not in line with the idea that we're going to just continue to move higher. If you also look at the CRSI, bear in mind this is a weekly chart, there's the highest CRSI reading, then it weakens here. I would have expected in a wave 3 or 3 to see this as the highest reading. We then get another divergence here, and at the moment this was on a sell signal with momentum coming off. We've still got negative momentum, although it has improved considerably, but the CRSI is on a weekly time frame is curling back down, and that's not really what you want to see. The key dominant cycle, the 62-week cycle, does suggest that we could get a bounce here. Now, whether that's enough to make new highs or not, I'm somewhat skeptical. If I bring it down to a daily time frame, and there's the composite, it's expecting a little push up here into the back end of this year before we start to see something to the downside. Now, whether that then is the beginning of something much, much bigger to the downside or not remains to be seen. But, you know, Elliott wave is somewhat subjective, and what you look for are the fib extensions and structure into them, and then the continuation and pivot supports. So, you know, the good news is that the key pivot here is all the way down at 55.69. But what doesn't fit is if that's an ABC for a 1, a wave 2 should be relatively quick and relatively simple, even in a diagonal structure. And that's not what we're seeing. This looks more complex. If we're going to come down further in terms of time taken, it's starting to stretch. I mean, it's a characteristic of waves, therefore it's a guideline rather than a rule. But I would not really want to be looking at owning or taking risk on AMD at this point in time. Now, in terms of going into tonight's earnings, the first level above to watch is 169.38, so broadly 170. And then you've got the all-time high at 175. Below there, we've got two levels to watch, 158 and then all the way down here at 150. So if you look at the CRSI on this hourly, it's pretty stretched, although it's not curling down. Momentum, you know, it's coming off and it's diverged from the highs. So really mixed signals is what I would say here in AMD. And, you know, if in doubt, keep out. We do not want to be taking positions in the market that don't fit the criteria. And if you add that up, and I think it was Dane that made the comment earlier that he's staying out of everything until the elections are out the way. And that, I think, is a pretty sound strategy all round at this particular point in time. Effectively, earnings can be a crapshoot at the best of times. And I think given other factors, that strategy of wait and see is probably the best one. Okay, let's move on and look at Google. Now, let's go out to the weekly chart. And Google, off its inception low all the way back here in 2004, clean 5 up for a wave 1, a nice clean ABC back for a wave 2. So I'm looking at a wave 3 heading up to the 2.0 extension at 374 all told. And within that, we need to see 5 waves, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 into the 123.6 fib. ABC for the wave 4. Now again, Google, this structure off the low in 2020 is looking very much like a diagonal. So you have an ABC for a 1 with a 2 back, A, B, and this should therefore be the C of 3. Minimum target above that I'd expect to see would be 200 with a possibility of 243 to 250. Now, cycles. This is the weekly cycles. You can see the composite is suggesting we don't have that much further to go. The core dominant cycle running at 190 days does have a little longer to go on the upside, and it's suggesting around March time next year, whereas the composite's suggesting around the middle of December this year. So caution warranted. We're getting close to a cycle top. If I come down to the daily, off the 2, A, B, ABC 1, 2, ABC 3, potentially a 4 we're going to need to see an A, B, C structure up. And again, it could just, if it just plows straight up here, then we've got an A, small b, and we just finish here at the 1.0 extension at 200. If we go up higher, pull back again, then subdivide, it can go up to that 243 to 250.47 area. But the composite cycle here is saying we've got a little bit more downside. The core daily cycle running at 208 days is bottoming out. We do have a CRSI buy signal coming off here, and we are just about on a Mansfield buy. What I would suggest is this in Google. I'm just going to take it down to an hourly time frame here. It's just poking its nose above resistance. First thing to watch tonight is, can it break out above 169.11? If it can do that, this thing can run. The key pivot support below is at 159.93, and then the must hold level is down here at 147.94 in Google. Now, working back over and going back to our relative rotation, Google is part of XLC, which is the communication services sector. So if we look at XLC relative to, if we go back to the, so if we look at XLC relative to the SPY is what I wanted to look at. Here we go. So Google, here it is. It's come from the weakening, lagging. It is still in the lagging, but it's very close to moving into improving and heading in the right direction. You'll also notice it's quite close to the neutral zone here. So a little bit more encouraging with Google from a relative strength and relative rotation perspective by comparison to AMD. There's a case to be made from an Elliott perspective that we have higher to go, and there's also a case to suggest with cycles that we similarly have higher to go in Google here. So potentially we could see this move up on earnings tonight. Certainly if it pulls back and can hold the 148.11 area, that then still leaves an upside scenario to a new high in Google prior to starting a larger degree pullback, likely later this year to early next year. Okay, so that's what I've got on Google and AMD. It's going to be interesting. We'll take a look at them again tomorrow to see what the reaction to the earnings reports tonight is.